Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Federal Reserve Money Stock Report discontinued. Let's explore. Yep, you're seeing it right here. This is not anywhere in the news, but essentially what this is, it's a report that's released weekly. And it was made aware of this change that happened kind of behind the scenes here. And this is coming to us from the St. Louis Federal Reserve site from Dewey Raimundo. And what's interesting about this is a report that was done weekly that talked about M1 money stock and also the M2 money stock as well that has been discontinued. So these reports from M1 and M2 money supply, and before we get too much into that, let's talk a little bit about the money supply. This is from the New York Fed, and this is an example of a chart that goes back to September 2001, but it gives you an idea of what is M1 money supply. That is essentially currency that's ready to be spent right now. And yes, I am using the term money as opposed to currency, but they are one and the same. It's just the level of what money is. The most stable money, I believe, is gold and silver, but we'll get more into that later. But indeed, there is a level of faith and confidence in the dollar, but there's actually four types of monetary supply. There's M0, M1, M2, and M3. But when we talk about it, the most common terms are M1 and M2. But nonetheless, M2 is money that works based off the foundation of M1, which is currency ready to spend and checking deposits and the like. M2 contains M1, but it also has very safe investment vehicles to where you can earn interest on money in a savings, deposits, small time deposits, and retail money funds, money markets and the like. Whereas M3 has a larger deposits and institutional monetary money funds, and also repos, repurchase agreements and the like. And there's a lot more of that floating around with the M3 monetary supply there. So, but by and large, these reports were done on a weekly basis. And as you can see here from a link shared with me by Dewey, that this has been discontinued and is now moved into this report here, the M1SL, which is a monthly report as opposed to a weekly report here. And so here it says on the previous link here, the weekly series is discontinued and will no longer be updated. The non-seasonally adjusted version of this weekly series and the seasonally adjusted monthly series is now M1SL, which will be occurring monthly. It has H6 statistical release, is published on a monthly frequency, and contains only monthly average data needed to construct the monetary aggregates. Weekly average non-seasonally adjusted data will continue to be made available, while weekly average seasonally adjusted data will no longer be available. And so this is something that is, would not seem like to be that big of a deal for some. Because, but the thing is when it's done on a monthly basis and they're changing and aggregating it, a lot of things can happen behind the scenes that we're not going to be aware of that you would normally see in a weekly report. But nonetheless, I think the tail of the tape, especially for M1, is look at how much in this current recession we're in of billions of dollars that have been printed over and trillions of dollars over the past year. It's astronomical, absolutely astronomical. When you take into account M2 supply, you can see that it's still a big dip or big increase in the supply. It's been ongoing for quite some time. Billions of dollars been produced, and of course, this leads us to why the Federal Reserve, by design, is inflating the dollar, or devaluing the dollar, inflating by way of inflation. And these charts are the tail of the tape. And in a way, it kind of doesn't matter what happens or how it comes across. But look at these charts. You can see how it's almost the lines have changed a little bit here between these two charts from a weekly to a monthly average here. We can see this has much more accurate or data here that's showing, and this one's kind of smoothed out. But then again, this is kind of going back here. We can narrow this, we can squeeze this window down and kind of see closer here, but it is kind of smoothed out. And what does that really mean for us? Probably not a whole lot on the surface. I think in a way this means the Federal Reserve can hide more information. Whenever you do something in a less frequency, you can adjust and move things around, and that means to less transparency in my mind. Of course, there could be more to this. If anybody else knows anything more, I'd be curious to see. But nonetheless, the fact that something's being released monthly leaves a couple of questions in my mind as to what's going to be happening in the near future. It raises a red flag, and I think that's to Dewey's point here by sharing this with me. It's not been reported on in any news outlet that I've been able to find or that he's been able to find. But what could this potentially mean for us? Number one is it could not mean anything. It could just mean that they have just decided to adjust, and maybe they have some information, a way to be able to report it even more accurately. In a sense, maybe to their point is maybe it's something to aggregate it in a more accurate way or easier to understand way. But the other thing is that it could mean that it is prepping up for some sort of great shift or change that will be occurring. We all know and are aware of the reset, potential. There's talk of a great reset, and it's not just a financial or fiscal one, but it's also in many different areas that include social change, and really what many of us feel like is going to be social engineering involved in there, social justice, change, and engineering in relation to with our monetary supply. In fact, Janet Yellen has kind of made that kind of statement too, as the Secretary of the Treasury. She was a former Fed chair, and I believe that she will be working very closely with the Federal Reserve, and we'll see how this does. But in my mind, if you report less frequently, there's more room to hide data or to smooth out data, and to, I don't know, it causes more questions than answers, and it has me a little bit concerned. And so what does this mean? This is the stock measures H6 release. As far as talking about it here, the money stock measures will recognize savings deposits as a type of transaction account. Starting with the publication of today, it reflects the board's action last year to remove the regulatory distinction between transaction accounts and savings deposits by deleting the 6 per month transfer limit on savings deposits. And so it kind of gets into the minutiae there of all this, but the aggregate and monetary aggregate significantly while leaving the M2 monetary aggregate unchanged there with that regard. But the thing is it all starts with M1. That's kind of the foundation for all of this. And so when they change these reports and they change how it's reported, it causes some concern. But we all know that in the end, what's transparent and is there for all to see is that we are printing money at an alarming rate, and this currency is going to be eventually sped up in its circulation among entities, not only in the United States but around the world, which will cause inflation. And how do we handle inflation? Well, we hedge against it. And how do you hedge against it? Well, there's multiple ways to hedge against inflation, and that is to put your money into assets that are inflation proof. And that would typically be land, and other commodities and assets out there. And what this channel talks about, many others talk about, is the assets that have been recognized as money for millennia, and is the most stable form of money, that is gold and silver. And I believe that nowadays, especially, gold is the ultimate hedge, but silver, even though more volatile over the long course of time, it is a very good hedge as well too. Yea, though it has a dual purpose and dual role these days as a commodity, a very successful commodity, and diverse in providing technology, in biomedical, as well as environmental and technological and industrial technology with silver out there. But nonetheless, it is going to be interesting to see how this plays out, in terms of the reporting, in terms of people questioning it. Now that people know, there's a lot of complexities in how the Federal Reserve does do things. And, when you look at the website, there is a .org. They also have a .gov, federalreserve.gov. And it's so it's a private institution, but they have a .gov extension there. So it makes you wonder, it's the Federal Reserve Chair is appointed by the president. The government agency is a private institution, which means they have a lot of leeway. And what is their role? It's the central bank of the United States. It provides the nation with a safe, flexible, and stable monetary and financial system. Well, one can beg to differ on that, especially the safe part. What is safe? I believe gold and silver are safe. They are certainly flexible, and boy, they've been flexing a lot as of late. But nonetheless, there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of stuff to consider here as we look at these Board of Governors here, with Jerome Powell being the head, and he's at the helm. We'll see how this all plays out. But nonetheless, there it is. Federal Reserve changing how they report and how that will affect us. It'll be very interesting to see. But very astute of Dewey to find this information and share it with me. So I thought I'd share it with you. And I think it tells us that we are getting ready for some changes, I believe, in our monetary system. And this could be foreshadowing of what could be to come. And the answer, as is always the case, in terms of hedging and protecting our wealth, gold and silver. So I hope, if you haven't considered it before, to maybe take that into account as well too, for preserving your wealth with precious metals. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.